This happened a few months ago. I'm 35 now, and I don't usually take time off from work. I decided to go camping for the weekend. I wanted to escape my busy life as a software developer. Being in nature sounded perfect for recharging my creativity. I found a remote campsite deep in the woods. No cell service or distractions. When I set everything up, it was quiet. Just me and the trees. Later that night, I sat by the campfire watching the flames. Then I heard something. Faint laughter echoed through the trees. At first I thought it was other campers, but the laugh was strange, like a whisper. It sent a chill down my spine. I dismissed it, thinking it was just my imagination. The next morning, I went for a hike. I enjoyed the peace and quiet. When I got back, something felt off. Fresh footprints were around my tent. I was sure I hadn't seen anyone nearby. My heart raced as I checked the area. I felt like I was being watched, but I couldn't see anyone. I thought maybe someone else was camping close by. But they had to be near for those tracks to be so fresh. I felt uneasy but tried to shake it off. As night fell again, I settled by the fire. I hoped it would ease my nerves. The shadows moved in the firelight and the laugh returned. It was clearer now, almost melodic but wrong. I felt cold, my palms sweaty. I scanned the trees, convinced something was out there. I thought I saw a figure beyond the light. But when I looked again, it was gone. I didn't know if I called out. I just sat there, frozen. The laughter faded into the woods, but the feeling of being watched stayed. I tried to convince myself it was just the wind or wildlife, but I couldn't shake the thought about those footprints. I stayed up that night listening for sounds. My heart raced every time a branch snapped. I was alone, but it felt like I wasn't. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I got my bag ready to leave early. Just as I zipped it, I heard someone whisper my name. I turned around, and no one was there. My whole body froze. I don't know how to explain that moment. I sprinted to my car, adrenaline pumping. I slammed the door and drove away. I still think about those nights. What was that laugh? Why were there footprints around my tent? I wonder if I imagined it all, but what haunts me the most is that whisper. Did someone want me to stay? The woods felt alive. They felt like they didn't want me to leave. I can't shake that feeling, no matter how hard I try. After that weekend, I tried to move on. I returned to my job, buried myself in code, and focused on deadlines. But the memory of those nights lingered. I kept replaying everything in my mind. The laugh, the footprints, the whisper. Each day felt heavy, as if something unseen followed me. A few weeks later, I decided to visit a friend who lived near the woods. I thought maybe talking about my experience would help me make sense of it. His name was Ben, and he was an avid hiker. As we sat on his porch, I shared what happened, trying to laugh it off, but his expression shifted when I mentioned the laughter. "Did you hear the stories?" he asked, his tone low. My stomach knotted. "What stories?" He leaned in closer, his eyes serious. "There's a legend about those woods. People say that if you hear laughter late at night, it's not good. Some people believe it's a trickster spirit trying to lure you deeper into the forest." I felt a chill. "Are you serious?" "They also say it leaves footprints that aren't human," he continued. "Some even claim they've seen shadowy figures between the trees." My heart raced again. It couldn't be true, could it? I had dismissed everything before, but now it felt too real. I wanted to scoff at his tales, but some part of me believed it. The laughter echoed in my mind. "Have you ever camped there?" I asked carefully. Ben shook his head. "I've avoided it because of the stories. There are other places in the mountains, safer places." I wanted to ask him more, but I didn't want to sound paranoid. So I changed the subject. But the unease never truly left me. When I returned home, I couldn't stop thinking about what Ben said. I had been back to that campsite, risked sleeping in that eerily quiet night. Curiosity clawed at me. I pulled up my old photos from the trip. I had taken some of the forest scenery. Flicking through the images, I suddenly noticed something odd. In one of the pictures, near the edge of the frame, I could see something. A vague shape that looked like a figure. Dark, barely noticeable. My breath caught in my throat. My mind raced. Had I really seen that figure in real life? Or had I simply captured something I was unable to notice at the time? The hairs on my arm stood up. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining that shape creeping closer as I sat by my fire. I finally decided to go back and investigate. I needed answers. The next day I packed my bag again. This time I felt a mixture of fear and determination. I had to face whatever was in those woods. As I drove to the campsite, the sun dipped low in the sky, throwing the trees into sharp shadows. I turned my phone off, just like before. I didn't want distractions, just me, the woods, and whatever lingered there. That night, sitting by the fire, I glanced towards the dark edges of the forest, waiting, listening. And that feeling, the one I thought I had left behind, crept back. Then the laugh echoed again, but this time it felt closer. My heart raced. I wasn't alone. I stood scanning the trees, waiting for something to emerge. That's when I saw it. A flash of movement joined the shadows. It was quick, maybe just an animal. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me too. And as the night deepened, the laughter returned, louder and more inviting this time. I felt a pull, a temptation to step into the woods. What was it trying to tell me? The laughter faded, replaced by a heavy silence. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. It felt foolish to feel so scared. I had camped multiple times before without issues. But this was different. Tentatively, I took a step toward the trees, just one step. I wanted to know where it was coming from, but the underbrush crackled beneath my feet, and I froze. Just a twig breaking. Nothing more. Yet I felt the shadows shift, as if they were watching me. Maybe it's just the wind, I muttered to myself, hoping to convince my racing mind. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I had to focus. I walked around the fire, my eyes straining against the darkness. It was then that I noticed something faint glimmering in the distance. A tiny light, flickering like a candle, too far to make sense of. My curiosity pulled me again. As I moved toward the light, the laughter returned, louder, more enticing. I could hardly hear my own thoughts over it. I stopped, took another breath and called out, "Hello?" Silence answered, but it didn't feel comforting. My skin prickled. I felt exposed, as if I was the prey. A soft rustle swept through the trees, and I turned, instinctively scanning the area around me. My senses heightened. Then I saw it. A figure just beyond the trees, moving slowly. My heart sank into my stomach. It was dark, just like in my photo. The figure darted behind a thick trunk when I squinted. I couldn't see it clearly, but I felt its presence looming. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice trembling. No response. Just darkness and the weight of the night pressing down on me. I was afraid that moving closer might invite it out. I backed toward the firelight, adrenaline pulsing through me. The shadows seemed to swirl, and for a moment I could have sworn that the laughter came from everywhere at once. It was maddening. I crouched low beside my dying fire, trying to devise a plan. What was it? Was this just a myth? Or had I stepped into something more sinister? The haunting truth was that I didn't want to find out anymore. I decided to pack up. Whatever that thing was, I didn't want to provoke it. But as I turned to gather my things, I heard a soft whisper. It was clear enough that I almost understood it. My body froze. It felt like the world had gone quiet, everyone holding their breath. "Stay." A chill washed over me. It was a command, a soft plea. The hair on the back of my neck stood straight. I strode to my tent and yanked my backpack onto my shoulders. As I zipped it closed, the laughter returned, but it was mixed with something more sinister, a growl that rattled my bones. My heart clenched, and I stumbled back toward the fire, eyes darting. It was no longer just laughter, it felt like a threat. Then, everything went dark. The fire flickered and sputtered out in an instant, leaving me in a pitch-black void. I fumbled for my flashlight, my hands shaking as I switched it on, and then I saw it again. The figure stood at the edge of the flickering light, watching me. But it wasn't just a shadow anymore. It was smiling. The light from my flashlight pierced through the darkness, illuminating the figure that had been lurking just out of reach. My breath caught in my throat. Its face was twisted in an unsettling grin, a wide stretch that didn't belong to anything human. The shadows danced around it, making the outline flicker like a bad movie reel. "Get away!" I shouted, more forcefully than I intended. The smile didn't fade. If anything, it grew wider. I felt paralyzed, rooted in place. But instinct kicked in and I stumbled backward, desperate to escape from whatever that thing was. "Run!" a voice echoed in my mind. It wasn't a whisper this time. This felt more like an urgent command. I turned, throwing myself into the brush, the branches scratching at my arms and face as I pushed through. I could hear it moving behind me, quick and silent, like a predator. The laughter morphed into frantic whispers, urging me on. My flashlight flickered, threatening to die as I raced toward the steep incline of the hill. I had to reach the clearing at the top. There might be safety. My legs burned as I sprinted uphill, each step filled with dread. Glancing back, I caught another glimpse of that smile, now closer, stretching impossibly wide. A shiver coursed through my spine. I couldn't let fear paralyze me. I needed to keep moving. Just as my foot landed on the flat ground of the clearing, the flashlight flickered out entirely. Total darkness surrounded me. Panic surged. I frantically slapped the flashlight against my palm, praying for it to come back to life. But then I heard it again. That soft whisper urging me. "Stay." I stopped, frozen by its command. It felt personal, as if it knew me. I shook my head, trying to reject the pull. "No!" I shouted, desperate to drown out the sound. "You don't control me." The laughter erupted once more, a cacophony that echoed through the trees, mocking my defiance. I couldn't tell which direction it came from anymore. The fear was suffocating. I closed my eyes, trying to regain my bearings. When I opened my eyes again, something caught my attention in the corner of the clearing. A soft glow emerged, warm and inviting. It seemed to pulse, beckoning me closer. I hesitated, uncertainty gripping me again. But I couldn't stay lost in the dark. As I moved toward the light, something shifted in the shadows behind me. The laughter subsided, replaced by an eerie stillness that made my skin crawl. I turned just in time to catch a glimpse of movement. Another figure had emerged, identical to the one before but with a horrific twist. Its face was no longer smiling. Instead, its mouth was open wide, showcasing jagged teeth that glimmered in the faint light. "What is this?" I gasped, backing away slowly. "What do you want?" A chill filled the air, and the answer came in the form of a breathy chorus echoing around me. "Join us." And just like that, the light vanished, plunging me back into darkness, with the two figures closing in. My heart raced as I turned to run, but my legs felt heavy. Whatever this was, I couldn't let it catch me. As I sprinted toward the edge of the clearing, a new dread settled in my stomach. I could feel their cold presence right behind me, urging me to stay, but I wouldn't stop, not now. The ground beneath my feet felt uneven as I sprinted, each step a desperate attempt to escape the unknown horrors I had just confronted. I could hear their movements, a syncopated rhythm of footfalls thudding against the earth, mirroring my own frantic pace. My mind raced with thoughts, none of them clear. What were those things? They weren't human, but they weren't just shadows either. Adrenaline surged through me as I dove into the thick tree line beyond the clearing. The branches clawed at my clothes, pulling me back, but I pushed through. "Keep going," I murmured to myself. I had to find the trail. I stumbled over roots and rocks, each step feeling more uncertain than the last. Suddenly, I heard a rustling sound to my left, sharp and abrupt. I turned, ready to confront whatever lurked there, but all I found was darkened foliage swaying gently in the breeze. I couldn't stop. I didn't know if they were still behind me, but the very thought sent a chill deep into my bones. Out in the open again, a satin expanse of moonlight illuminated a narrow path ahead. The trail appeared worn, almost inviting. My instinct screamed to follow it. I hesitated, fighting the instinct to look back once more. But I focused on the path ahead, urging myself to just keep moving, to put distance between myself and whatever had stalked me in the clearing. That's when I noticed it. A figure stood just within my periphery, half hidden by the trees. Panic stirred within me again. I squinted, trying to discern its features, but it remained obscured, a shadow cloaked in mystery. The urge to flee surged, but something held me in place. "Help," it whispered, its voice thin and shuddery, just above the rustle of leaves. I blinked, trying to process what I was hearing. "What?" I croaked out, my throat dry and tight. "Help me." The words came again, clearer this time, tinged with an unnatural urgency. "You must find us before it's too late." My heart raced. What was us? Who were those figures? "I don't want to," I started to say, but the figure stepped closer. A flicker of light caught its face and terror shot through me. Although the features were human, something in its eyes hinted at a depth of despair that I couldn't understand. I could see the edges of its mouth twitching slightly, but it wasn't smiling. It looked pleading. Before I could respond, the laughter returned. This time it echoed through the woods, drowning out the figure's voice. The immense sound made it impossible to think. Fear mounted in me again. I turned and bolted down the path, leaving the figure behind. Their plea echoed in my mind, mingling with the sinister laughter that followed. I ran until I stumbled over a log and fell hard against the ground. When I pushed myself back up, gasping for breath, I noticed something glinting on the forest floor. A tarnished pendant dangled from a thin chain half buried in leaves. I reached for it with trembling fingers, unable to shake the feeling it was significant, but then I heard a piercing shriek from somewhere deep in the woods. Everything went silent. I stood frozen for a moment, the pendant clutched tightly in my palm. Where was everyone? What had I gotten myself into? The clearing behind me seemed miles away. Then, in the silence, I heard a whisper again. This time, it was not a plea but a demand. "Come find us." The thought of going back made my stomach turn, but something about that calming command felt unavoidable. I was already in too deep. The night wasn't done with me yet. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was watching me. The pendant felt cold against my skin, its weight reminding me I wasn't alone. I squeezed it tightly, and the woods around me grew eerily quiet, as if holding its breath. Then a distant sound broke the stillness, a voice, familiar yet strange, drifting through the trees. "Help, please." The plea echoed like an old memory, tugging at my heart. Was it the same voice I had heard before? I felt drawn to it, a magnetic pull on my very core, but fear knotted in my stomach. Hadn't I just run from something terrifying? I hesitated. "I can't just leave," I whispered to myself. "But what if it's a trap?" I took a deep breath, wishing I could silence the internal war raging within me. As I crept forward, the chill of the air tightened around me. My eyes scanned the trees, searching for the figure, the one asking for help. Every shadow seemed alive, and with every rustle of leaves, my instincts screamed for me to run. But the voice persisted, growing clearer. "You must find us." I stepped deeper into the woods. My pulse thrummed loudly, a counterpoint to the ominous whispers that surrounded me. I held the pendant tightly, wishing it would somehow protect me. The path narrowed, becoming overgrown with thorny vines that snagged at my clothes. That's when I saw a glimmer in the underbrush. I hesitated, my heart racing as I knelt down. It was another piece of jewelry, a silver bracelet this time, engraved with strange symbols. Each mark seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Questions flooded my mind. Why were these trinkets scattered here? What did they mean? The voice returned, insistent. "You're almost there." I could feel the panic welling up again, but there was another presence nearby, a sensation of warmth that seemed to counteract the cold dread seeping into my bones. It felt like hope, yet also like a warning. Conflicted, I picked up the bracelet and slipped it onto my wrist, the cool metal fitting snugly as if it belonged. In that moment, the laughter erupted again, even closer this time. It was a dark, twisted joy that sent shivers racing down my spine. I clutched the pendant, and the bracelet balled up in my fist, feeling them become almost alive in my grip. The laughter morphed into hisses and growls, distant but unmistakable. I turned on my heel, adrenaline surging. "I need to leave," I whispered, my breath hot and heavy against the night air. But as I pressed forward, I was met with a wall of thorns. Panic flared as I felt my heart race. This wasn't where I was supposed to be. I struggled against the bramble, but the more I fought, the tighter it seemed to grip me. Then another figure appeared, a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye. It flickered in and out of the shadows, a rush of pale skin and dark hair. "Help!" I called out, desperation pouring from my voice. "Where are you? Show yourself!" But the figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, and I was left alone, the laughter echoing around me like a haunting refrain. I could feel it building, the urge to flee clawed at my insides, and I understood now the grotesque truth. They weren't just figures in the shadows. They were trapped, just like me. Then it happened. Everything went dark. I was plunged into a void, the laughter swallowed whole by an oppressive silence. My heart raced as fear sizzled in my veins. Something was coming for me, or I stood still, straining my ears for any sound, any hint of what was to follow. But I was alone, the blackness closing in tight. And just when I thought all hope was lost, I felt a sudden tug at my wrist. The bracelet pulsed with warmth, and I realized I was not meant to face this alone. I took a breath, steeling myself. "I will find you," I declared into the void, hoping the words carried beyond my fear. But as I did, I heard rustling behind me. Someone, or something, was in the dark. I turned slowly, each movement feeling like it happened in slow motion. My breath quickened, and I felt the weight of the pendant and bracelet anchoring me, reminding me that I wasn't entirely defenseless. The darkness pressed in, suffocating, but I forced myself to focus. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice stronger than I felt. There was silence. Then a low growl broke through, reverberating through the thick air. I froze, dread curling in my stomach. Whatever was lurking didn't seem to care about hiding anymore. I had a choice. Stay and confront whatever this was, or turn and run. But before I could decide, the air around me shifted, suddenly warmer. It was as if something, someone, was drawing closer. I peered into the dark, straining to see a shape emerging from the shadows. "Please, I'm here to help," I yelled, startling myself with the panic clawing at my throat. A figure finally stepped into the dim light, but it wasn't what I expected. Instead of a creature or ghost, it looked like a girl, pale and trembling, with wild hair framing her face. There was a look of desperation in her eyes, sending an instant wave of sympathy through me. "Help me," she whispered, her voice almost drowned out by the rustling trees. But then she looked over her shoulder, with a mix of horror and urgency. "You shouldn't have come here. They'll find you." "Who? What do you mean?" The questions flooded my mind, but she didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer, eyes darting uneasily, as if she sensed something lurking in the dark. Just then, the brambles around me shifted as if an unseen force was pushing against them. I could feel the danger pressing in, and my instinct screamed at me to run. I couldn't let fear paralyze me. What do I need to do? Her gaze locked onto mine, and in that moment, I felt an unexplainable connection, a shared urgency. She extended a shaking hand, revealing a small, intricate key made of silver. Take this. It will help you find the truth, but you must hurry. Once they come, there's no escape. Before I could respond, a chilling laugh rang out again, closer and louder, echoing through the woods. Panic surged through me. "No, wait!" I shouted, reaching forward, but she vanished just like the other figure, swallowed back into the darkness. The laughter morphed into a cacophony of unearthly sounds, and shadows twisted at the edges of my vision. I felt the thorns around me loosening their grip. This was my chance to escape. Clutching the key, I turned and sprinted down the narrow path, the direction feeling like a gamble but my only option. Branches whipped against my skin, and I stumbled, scraping my knees on the forest floor. I pushed myself to keep going, holding the key tightly, the weight of it grounding me amidst the chaos. The laughter echoed behind me, a haunting melody urging me to flee faster. Then a blinding flash erupted in front of me, illuminating the woods. I squinted against the light, and when the glare faded, a doorway appeared in the trees, framed by twisting vines and glowing symbols. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. I paused, fear and curiosity battling within me. Should I go through? What lay on the other side? But I knew I had no choice. I stepped forward, the weight of the key heavy in my pocket, and crossed the threshold, uncertainty mixing with a burgeoning hope that maybe, just maybe, I'd find the answers I desperately sought. The moment I stepped through the doorway, the world shifted dramatically. The air became lighter and cooler, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat of the forest behind me. I found myself in a clearing bathed in a gentle, ethereal light, a place that felt alive with energy. It was as if I had crossed into another realm altogether. Before I could catch my breath, I caught sight of shimmering figures, twinkling wisps that danced around the trees. They moved like fireflies, painting the air with luminescent trails. My heart raced, half in wonder, half in fear. Was this a dream or reality? Then the key in my pocket suddenly felt warmer. I withdrew it, examining the swirling patterns engraved onto its surface. It looked even more intricate than I remembered. "What do I do with you?" I murmured, as if it could answer me. The moment I spoke, the wisps began to gather closer, swirling around the key as if drawn to it. My pulse quickened. I realized they were responding to me, to the key. I held it out, feeling a mix of trepidation and hope. Surely this was a sign. Maybe it would lead me to the girl and uncover the truth she had hinted at. But before I could act, a low, rumbling sound echoed through the clearing, and the joyous atmosphere shifted to one of tension. The sound grew louder, vibrating through the ground beneath me. I turned, scanning the edges of the clearing for the source. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows of the trees, a tall, dark silhouette that slowly took form. My heart dropped as I recognized the figure. It was the girl from before, but something was different. The desperation in her eyes had morphed into a dark determination. "Why did you come here?" she asked, her voice colder than before. "You've put us all in danger." "Danger? What do you mean? I'm trying to help," I stammered, confusion flooding my mind. "You said I had to hurry. I don't understand." She took a step forward, and I noticed the air around her was charged with an intensity I hadn't felt before. "You shouldn't have taken the key. Now they'll come for you," she hissed, glancing over her shoulder as if anticipating an attack. Just then, the rumblings intensified and I felt the ground shake beneath my feet. I stumbled, but managed to steady myself. Shadows began to seep into the clearing, twisting and moving as if they had their own will. The laughter that had haunted me returned, echoing through the trees, a prelude to something horrific. What does that mean? Who are they? I shouted above the noise, panic clawing at my throat. I didn't want to be trapped here, not with whatever threat was closing in. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, the shadows lunged forward, and I felt a surge of energy pull at me, dragging me back toward the doorway I had entered through. I could feel the key pulsing in my hand, urging me to act. With a sudden burst of courage, I turned, convinced that the way out was to go back through the doorway. I sprinted toward it as shadows erupted around me, and just as I reached the threshold, I glanced back one last time. The girl stood there, her expression a mix of sadness and anger, fading into the darkness. I crossed into the light, heart racing, but this time I didn't feel safe. I could still hear the laughter and the ominous rumblings as I stumbled back into the woods. Now I had more questions than before. What did the key really unlock, and why did it put me at risk? I took a deep breath, trying to collect my thoughts, when suddenly I caught sight of something shimmering on the ground, a glint that wasn't the key. I knelt down and picked it up. That's when the realization hit me, chilling me to my core. It was a locket, a family locket, one that belonged to my mother, the one she lost years ago. I gripped the locket tightly in my hand, the cool metal now feeling absurdly hot. It was unmistakable. My mother's locket, the one she always wore before it vanished without a trace. How could it be here? I felt a surge of confusion mixed with a glimmering hope. Maybe this was a sign, a connection to whatever I had stumbled into. Panic bubbled up inside me again as the sound of laughter echoed from deeper within the woods. I straightened up, scanning my surroundings. The shadows weren't just lingering in the clearing, they seemed to stretch and twist toward me, curling around the trees with a hunger, as if they were alive. I backed away instinctively, my eyes darting from shadow to shadow. In the midst of my panic, I suddenly remembered the warmth of the key in my pocket. With trembling fingers, I pulled it out again, watching as the engraved patterns glowed faintly in the darkening landscape. Was it connected to the locket? My mind raced. Was this a clue to finding out more about my mother, or a key to another mystery? Just then, a rustling sound broke through my thoughts, and I froze. Something was moving in the underbrush nearby. My pulse quickened. I strained to make sense of it. Was it the girl again, or something darker? The shadows around me shifted, as if responding to the disturbance, ready to pounce. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice wavering. I didn't want to show fear, but every instinct screamed at me to run. There was a beat of silence before a figure stepped into the dim light filtering through the trees. My heart fell. It wasn't the girl. I recognized the silhouette. "What are you doing here?" The voice was rough, filled with a warning that made my stomach churn. I'm just passing through," I stuttered, unsure of how to explain. "I found this." I held out the locket for them to see, hoping it would somehow validate my presence. "Leave now," the figure said sharply, taking a step closer. I could see the twist of their expression, a mix of anger and something else, fear. "You don't belong here. It's dangerous. You have the key, don't you?" I nodded, instinctively clutching it tighter. "But I don't know what it unlocks. I need to find out. Please, just tell me what's going on." The shadows twitched again, restless and agitated. The figure's gaze darted to the trees, and I could feel the threat creeping closer from the darkness. "They'll come for you if they know you have that," they said, panic creeping into their voice. "You need to go back. Forget what you saw." Before I could ask more, the laughter echoed again, this time louder and closer. The figure turned, tension coiling around them like a spring about to snap. "Run!" they shouted, urgency injecting fear into their voice. I didn't hesitate. I bolted back through the trees, branches snagging at my clothes as I sprinted. The shadows flickered behind me, angry and relentless. Every sound around me felt amplified, the crunch of leaves, the rustling of the branches, the beating of my own heart. Then I reached a stream, water sparkling in the moonlight. I skidded to a stop, my mind racing with thoughts of the locket, the key, and the girl. As I caught my breath, a sudden realization hit me. The laughter had stopped. An uneasy silence fell. I slowly turned, feeling the shift in the air. The shadows had receded to the forest's edge, but something was lurking just out of sight. That's when fear clawed at my insides again. I wasn't alone. I held the locket tightly, feeling its familiar weight against my palm. The flickering light of the moon glinted off its surface, the engraved patterns illuminating my surroundings. I took a moment to gather myself, though every instinct urged me to keep running. The urgency of the girl's earlier warning rang painfully clear in my mind. They'll come for you. But who were they? And how had I stumbled into such a tangled web of mystery? Then came the faintest sound, sibilant whispers carried on the wind, rustling through the trees. My heart thudded in my chest. I turned to face the direction from which the sound came, half expecting to see the shadowy figures emerging again. But there was nothing, just darkness enveloping the woods. Steeling myself, I blurted into the night, "What do you want from me?" The words hung in the air, a stark challenge in a place that felt hostile. Silence swallowed my voice, thick and oppressive, tightening around me like a noose. And then, from the shadows, a soft glow began to emerge. At first it looked like a wisp of light, flickering uncertainly, but as it grew, I realized it was a shape, or rather shapes. Several ghostly figures materialized, their outlines shimmering like mirages. They hovered near the tree line, staring at me with wide, hollow eyes. "She shouldn't have taken the key," one murmured, and I heard a trace of regret in its voice. Another added, "It wasn't meant for her." I stumbled back instinctively. You know about the key?" I stammered, trying to regain control of the situation. But they didn't seem to respond to my question. Instead, they turned their attention to one another, whispering in tones that felt foreign, as if I were intruding on a private conversation. The laughter returned, this time more sinister than before. It echoed through the clearing like a dark chorus, building in intensity, wrapping around me, drowning out everything else. My breath quickened as I spun on my heel, peering into the burgeoning darkness, looking for an escape. Panic surged once more. I took off again, plunging deeper into the woods, the shadows eager to consume me. I weaved through the trees towards the only semblance of a clear path, but as I ran, I began to hear another voice cutting through the laughter, one that was familiar yet distant. "Help!" it called, the edge of desperation unmistakable. A shiver ran down my spine. Was it her? The girl? Find us. What did that even mean? I forced myself to focus, retracing my steps mentally. It felt as if the woods were shifting around me, unknowingly aligning against my escape. "No, I won't go back!" I shouted, the conviction behind my words grounding me for just a moment. I could almost hear her voice urging me, but I was too torn to keep following it. Doubt gripped my thoughts painfully. What if the key led me deeper into whatever trap lay ahead? And yet, ambiguity gnawed at me. Was I truly escaping? Or was I running from something that had already claimed so many others? I clenched the locket and the key, my fingers brushing against the rough edges, and I felt a flicker of determination swell within me. Then, through the trees, I saw a light piercing the darkness ahead. Could it be the answers I sought, the way out? I approached cautiously, heart pounding in my chest. As I drew closer, The glow intensified, taking form, a shimmering doorway framed by ancient trees, their gnarled branches arching protectively over the entrance. Beyond that threshold lay unknown possibilities. With one last glance back at the shadowed woods, I felt a surge of instinct. The key was meant for this moment. I had to enter. As I stepped through, a sense of weightlessness enveloped me. It felt like I was floating, as if the world had dissolved to reveal something far greater, an expansive realm bathed in ethereal light. But even in this radiant space, I could still sense a presence lurking in the shadows, a reminder of the dangers I had escaped but couldn't quite leave behind. I took a deep breath, my heart steadying. I had traversed the woods, faced the whispers, and unwrapped pieces of my past. Now I had the key and a locket that seemed to hold so many secrets. Yet even as relief washed over me, I felt the weight of everything still unresolved, hanging like a fog over this strange new place. I quickly turned and caught a fleeting image of the girl from before, her eyes holding an enigmatic blend of sorrow and hope. She lingered just out of reach, forever woven into the fabric of this story. I would never truly know if those woods were haunted by spirits or myths of the past, or whether it was just the echoes of history bending into my reality. But as I stepped deeper into this glowing realm, I held on to the hope that whatever lingered within would also lead me closer to the truth. Questions remained. What were the stories entwined in the fabric of those trees? What lay ahead? In a strange way, I had entered a new chapter, but remnants of the past still whispered in my ears. As I looked toward the horizon stretching endlessly before me, I couldn't shake the feeling that the journey was far from complete.